What's up, guys, and welcome to the NFL Week 15 player pool. We're going to break down the DraftKings Showdown slate and look at some of the best plays and build some lineups. And it's a week where there's a lot of weird chalk, and I think that we can get a little bit different by taking a look and examining this slate, and I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching not Game Script. You're watching Player Pool. Going to be breaking down the DraftKings Week 15 player pool and taking a look at these games and looking at where the best matchups are and the guys that we can leave in our player pools this week. And on top of that, I think I'm going to use a Roto Grinders lineup builder this week, do things a little bit differently. And, I had a few requests for it recently in the YouTube chat, so I figure maybe on a main slate it'll be a better way to go for the optimizer. So we can do that. And before I get into it, make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on, and make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm at 1320. I'm looking for about 1400. I was hoping to get there by the end of this week, but by the end of week 16, looking to get to 1,400 YouTube subscribers. So only need about 80 left. So please hit that subscribe button. And, this is definitely going to be an interesting slate. From just the first glance of ownership, I hadn't really taken a look at ownership until recently. There looks like a lot of kind of weird guys at the top of the ownership, which could make things interesting this week. I think it's going to be one of those weeks where we can get a little bit different and not be too crazy. So let's take a look at the player pool. I got the Roto Grinders lineup HQ up, and one of the things that I like to do for this when I do lineups this way is the first thing I like to do is maybe take out some of the worst plays and build a few lineups just to see where like the standard projections are taking us as far as an optimal. So let's see what they're looking at. They're looking at Kyler Murray as the quarterback, Chuba Hubbard and James Conner as the running backs. Conner and Murray, some correlation, running back and quarterback there. We got the Brian Thomas and Calvin Ridley and T. Higgins as the wide receivers. You got some correlation there with T. Higgins and Calvin Ridley. We got Stone Smart as the tight end. Rashad White in the flex. Rashad White's going to be popular this week with Bucky Irving. I believe he's been ruled out already. And then we got the Ravens defense. So it's going to be, like a pretty chalky lineup. We got, let's see, some of these guys. We got 21% on Higgins, 23% on Connor versus New England. We got 36% on Hubbard, and 13% is pretty high for a quarterback, and 18% down on Stone Smart. So I'm going to see a lot of variations of this type of lineup this week, it seems. So next thing we can do here is maybe we build 150, with this general player pool, and we'll get an idea of what the optimizer is telling us the best plays are going to be this week. So it takes a minute for it to load. And while we're doing that, make sure to check out my Underdog short. I think at some point during this show, before I click on the optimizer to build with our player pool, I'm going to jump over to Underdog and show you guys some things that we can do based on thoughts on this slate to build some Underdog championship pick'ems, so we can get an idea of making some money over there. I've already built a couple of them, and there's some some long shot plays that are interesting this week that are going to help us get up to about 93 times our money on Underdog, so we can try and mess around there too. So I'm seeing a lot of Kyler Murray. If we go to the quarterback, they're trying to put 97% Kyler Murray in. They're putting 3% Will Levis and 1% Bryce Young. So interesting decision making there. We got Chuba Hubbard is in 100% of these lineups. We got Connor in 88%, Rashad White in 61%, Chase Brown in 24%, and Rico Dowdle. Like Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard, both pretty popular this week. Connor, really popular this week as well. If we go to wide receivers, it looks like Higgins is the most popular. And I like seeing Higgins as the most popular. I don't know why my wife keeps opening and closing the garage door, but that's that noise that you hear in the background. Higgins, 93% owned this week, which is good for me because I'm going to this Titans-Bengals game. And I'm recording this show early. I'm going to be recording the game script show as early as I can as well. To get that one up too. And then we got a 2-game Monday slate. So that's going to be like another good slate for us coming up. So we got Thielen is popular. Jerry Jeudy's popular against Kansas City. That is going to be an interesting game this week. Brian Thomas is popular with Mac Jones throwing him the ball. We got Cortland Sutton, who's going to be popular. A lot of these popular guys, we're going to have to take a look at the matchups, but there's some interesting chalk this week. Let's take a look at tight end. Stone Smart. He had a good game last week, but might just be an outlier game. Like he had 3 targets, 3 receptions for looks like he had 100 I'm going to say 100 receiving yards. Or is that 54 yards? It's a little bit confusing on the way that's set up. But, he's facing off against Kansas City, who's been one of the worst teams in the league against the tight end position. Now, I like Stone Smart to get yards this week. I'm hoping that he does because we can use that as a long shot in our Underdog to juice up our pick'em. But yeah, Stone Smart in DFS though at the chalk position is that's a little bit that's a little bit weird to be chalk. And then we got Brenton Strange. He's coming in number 2. We got Evan Ingram out this week. We got Trey McBride, and then like lower owned guys there. So defense, we got Ravens are going to be pretty high owned. Commanders, at least, pretty high owned, according to this lineup build about the lineups that we've created. They're pretty high owned in that. So, you get an idea of just scrolling through. They love Kyler Murray this week. So that's a lot of Kyler Murray in these lineups, and he's usually paired with James Conner. So a lot of Kyler Murray and James Conner lineups that is being built. I don't really like that correlation there, but that's the way that it's getting built. And let's go into here. We're going to click exclude all. All right, bud. And we're going to start looking at some of these matchups and get into building our player pool here. All right. Okay, so let's get into this now.
Okay.
All right.
What time is it going to be?
Like an hour. All right, so the first matchup we got here is Washington versus New Orleans. So looking at this matchup between Washington and New Orleans, let's see here. The running backs for Washington have a good matchup, and the slot receivers for Washington have a good matchup. We lost Noah Brown last week. He's going to be, I think he's on IR. So I'm not sure how long he's going to be out for. But that's not good for Washington. Let's take a look at wide receivers here. I believe the slot receiver is going to be Luke McCaffrey. He's at 33.100. So if we got Luke McCaffrey at 3,100 and Washington is getting 19.7, that's basically New Orleans has become basically the best matchup for slot receivers in the league right now as far as fantasy points allowed. So Luke McCaffrey at 3.1K is a guy that I'm going to want in my player pool. I'm going to take a look and see how much he's running in the slot right now. I'm seeing McCaffrey. He's 83% in the slot. Like I said, Noah Brown is out. That's going to be one less target for Jaden Daniels, and we got McCaffrey. We got the 15 games deep into the season now. He's acclimated. This is the type of time of year where some of these rookies start getting more work. And with Noah Brown out, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Luke McCaffrey start to get a little bit of work here. And let's take a look at his snap count. McCaffrey had 24% snap share before the bye. He really hasn't gotten over 44% since week 5. So let's look at week 5 for Noah Brown. Let's see. Stand by here, guys. I'm just going to try and find what Noah Brown did in week 5. I'm going to go over to DraftKings since he's obviously not in the player pool in the optimizer. Noah Brown in week 5. Was he out of the game in week 5? Yes, Noah Brown was out in week 5, and that's where we saw McCaffrey get a bump to 44% snap share. Now, not sure it's exactly correlated, but like maybe there's something there to it. McCaffrey, like I said, he's at 3.1K. He can get us some salary relief if we need it. So let's just put him in the player pool. All right. So other good matchups. We got Brian Robinson is going to have a good matchup. Let's look over at Brian Robinson. Let's put him in. He's got a good matchup. Saints have been giving up 24.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. Now, Jaden Daniels doesn't have the best matchup. New Orleans has given up 15.7 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. New Orleans is also running out a rookie quarterback. So there's not a whole lot that I like on the New Orleans side. I would tend to go more towards that Washington defense than I would to maybe Jaden Daniels. I prefer the Washington defense with Brian Robinson correlation more than I prefer anything with Jaden Daniels this week. And on the New Orleans side, there's really Washington's defense has been good. They got a rookie quarterback. If anyone, I'd be looking at maybe Juwan Johnson or something like that. There's really not any great matchup edges for the Saints this week. So I'm just going to skip the Saints just out of curiosity. Let's see what Kamara's ownership is. Kamara's ownership is pretty low at 8%. So you can certainly make a case for using him. Kendre Miller, I think, is scaring a lot of people off of Kamara. Interesting story with Kendre Miller. He came back off IR. The ex-coach, the one that got fired, hated Kendre Miller, and he put him on IR even though he didn't need to be there. And the coach just seemed like a complete idiot. And he put Kendre Miller on there because Kendre Miller was getting hurt. Like the guy was getting hurt. Not much he can do. Like he can try conditioning better or whatever, but Kendre Miller got hurt a few times and the coach got fed up with it and he put him on IR later in the season for no apparent reason where he didn't need to be there. So interesting situation with Kendre Miller, but now that he's back, there's a lot of analysts that were high on Kendre Miller in the past, and he never really panned out. But I think that like Kendre Miller coming back last week gave them new hope that maybe there's something to Kendre Miller, and that is, I think, taking a lot of people off of Kamara. He had 10 rushing attempts last week, which is pretty significant. He only had 32 yards, but he had a rushing touchdown on top of it. So got a decent workload last week. Maybe with the Saints, I think they're still fighting for a playoff spot. Like that entire division is still in it. I think the Panthers might even still be in it, or at least they were last week. I think losing last week maybe took them out of it, but I would not be surprised to see Kendre Miller get a little bit of work. He's at 4,500, but Washington likely to run away with this one. So the amount of work that Kendre Miller gets might be irrelevant in this one. So we got the defense in already. Let's move on to the next game. Let's look at Dallas and Carolina. Let's see. Not sure what happened there. Let's see. Let me try refreshing this. I'm not sure what happened there. I can't get my my players. All right, I'm going to excluded. I think it included all the Dallas, Carolina guys. So let me get them all out. Go over to my excluded again. Not sure how I have 28 guys now in my total. I only have 3 guys there. I don't know. This is acting weird on me. But let's go back over to excluded. Let's go through this Dallas Carolina game. CeeDee Lamb, he's going to be in a good spot this week with Carolina. They've been playing better recently, but this is a game where we could see CeeDee Lamb do something. They've only been allowing 10.6 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers and 16.1 to wideouts recently. So, it looks like a bad matchup for CeeDee Lamb. But if this game is competitive, which it could be, Dallas is giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and Carolina is giving up 19.5 DraftKings points a game. Like this could be a sloppy shootout situation, but Dallas's defense has been getting healthier, so maybe it's a little bit deceiving, like with as far as the points that Dallas is allowing. But we're looking at 22.6 DraftKings points a game for wideouts. Let's take a look at the Dallas defense and see where they're at as far as their health this week. I'm going to go over to their depth chart. Their center is out. Zach Martin is out. Their offensive line is banged up. That's going to be interesting for Carolina's defense. Obviously, we're on the backup quarterback already. We're missing some tackles here. We're missing Zach Martin, Earl Bostic, Cooper Beebe. On the defense, DeMarcus Lawrence is still on IR. Pretty banged up. Trayvon Diggs is out in this one. Jordan Lewis, questionable. A lot of depth issues on this secondary. So that's going to make the pass catchers interesting on Carolina's side. Trayvon Diggs being out, I think that's probably good for Leggett. And Jordan Lewis being questionable, being banged up, that might be good for Thielen. So let me take a look here. Going to take a look at the Carolina Panthers. Panthers have been playing decent recently on top of it with their offense. They've been primed for a win here. They've come close against a lot of good teams, and now they face Dallas. I think the effects of the head coach over there, the quarterback whisperer, is starting to take effect on Bryce Young a little bit. Thielen, though, is in a matchup against Jordan Lewis, who's banged up. So Thielen, let's see, Jordan Lewis is questionable. Yeah, Thielen is in a good spot this week. Let's get back over to our player pool here. Hubbard's in a good spot. I like Adam Thielen this week. Let's see. The Carolina defense is giving up 28.8 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, so we can put Dowdle in there too. Bryce Young at 5.3K might be interesting, but he's still got to contend with, like that Dallas pass rush a bit, and I don't completely trust him to do that against Micah Parsons. But they do have a good offensive line. So, I mean, you could make a case for Bryce Young. I just don't think that he has necessarily the upside that we need. And he's at 5.3K. He's not at that cheap, like sub 5K that we're used to seeing with him. Cooper Rush is, same situation, a little bit too expensive. And Carolina's pass defense hasn't been too bad recently. The tight end position, though, against Carolina is pretty good spot to target. And Ferguson's only at 3.8K this week, so he's worth keeping in our player pool. Came back from a concussion last week, had him on a showdown slate, didn't do anything, but now he's a couple games removed from that. Now, Diggs, who is the matchup against Diggs? Diggs runs 78% of his routes from right cornerback position, and that directly is going to affect, like Leggett runs 33% from the left, so that's the alignment there. So Leggett has a decent matchup, and then David Moore is also going to have a decent matchup. So I don't hate using Leggett. And you can make a case for Moore if you wanted to use him. He's at 3.9K. I think with Thielen back, though, I'd stick with Thielen and I'd stick with Leggett. But let's see what the targets have been like in the snap share. So David Moore, 5 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets. So 5 targets last week with Thielen back. Let's see, Thielen last week, 11 targets and 10 targets since he's been back. Leggett, and Thielen is 5.4K. Leggett last week, 8 targets since Thielen's been back. If we look over at their snap counts, let's go down to Carolina. Carolina, we're looking at Thielen at a 53% snap share last week and 51 the week he came back. Looks like early in the season he was under 50% too, so maybe that's just standard for Thielen. David Moore, did not really get impacted by Thielen being back, and neither did Leggett. So both those guys you could add into your player pool. I'm not really buying into David Moore, so I'm going to stick with those other guys, but you could definitely leave him in there if you like him. Let's see, tight ends. We already got. So if I was doing this as a stack, it might be a skinny stack situation where you can put Jake Ferguson and maybe run it with Adam Thielen or something along those lines. Or if you wanted to do like a Bryce Young stack, you could run it back with Ferguson. I think that would be like a inexpensive way to go. But this is a game with a total of about 42.5. And I think this is a game that Carolina can win, but I don't think it's going to be by putting up a bunch of points necessarily. So, I think I would do a skinny stack, if anything, on this game. Let's go into Cleveland versus Kansas City. This is a game where it's a 45.5 point total. Kansas City is 4.5 point favorites in this one. You might expect in a different year for Kansas City to be, like 10 point favorites in a game like this, but Kansas City has been kind of fraudulent this year. And then on top of that, their defense has not been playing well recently either. So Kansas City has the weak spot. Cleveland's defense is giving up 22.8 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position. So, this game could shoot out. The way that Winston's been playing recently, the way that Kansas City's been skating by with these wins lately, they're due for a loss in a game where they shouldn't be losing. And this could be that game. So I don't hate going with a game stack on this one. So let's take our guys out of this one. Let's get slots have been getting 15.2 DraftKings points a game from Kansas City. That's Elijah Moore. We got Cedric Tillman out on top of it, and David Njoku. So let's get Judy. It's going to be easy to narrow down the Cleveland guys this week. Let's get Hopkins. We can put Worthy in there too. Let's get Moore. Cleveland's given up 13.3 to the slot position, 13.6 to tight end. This could be a week where we see maybe Noah Gray does something. And Noah Gray is at 3.2K. So let's get Noah Gray in there. Let's put Kelsey in there too. We'll make a rule to only have one of those guys in our lineups. As far as the running back position, both teams are good against the run, so I don't think we necessarily need a running back. But I would lean Pacheco if I was going to use a running back in this one. But I think this might be a game where both teams, because Jameis is going to come out slinging no matter what. And this game is in Cleveland. I think Cleveland is where they beat Baltimore a few weeks ago too. So let me take a look at that real quick. The revenge game for Kareem Hunt, by the way. Let's see. Where was that game versus Baltimore? Yeah, it was in Baltimore. So, I mean, it was in Cleveland where Cleveland beat. So maybe they play a little bit better at home versus Kansas City too. But this is a game where you could probably start one of the defenses too. But 3.7K for the Chiefs D. I don't think we need to go that route. But some good, interesting plays here. You could start Pat Mahomes. He's at 6,700, but he's going to be interesting. Winston still at 5,500. He is good. We know that the Kansas City Chiefs are very weak against the tight end position. With Njoku out, that's going to leave us with Akins at 2,700. So you love to see that. All right, so we got some good guys from that game in there. Let's look at Miami-Houston. This is a game where I think that, Mixon's going to have the best matchup. Houston's been giving up 17.6 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position and 17 to the slot. Tyreek's running 35% of his routes out of the slot. Waddle has been running 24% of his routes. So this might be a Tua Tyreek situation. Let's look at the cost of Tyreek. Tyreek is 7,400. We can put Tyreek in our lineups. Let me take a look at the wideout position. Miami's given up 16.9 to wideouts. They've been vulnerable to tight end position too, giving up 12.8 DraftKings points. So I think Nico Collins we can leave in. If we go to running back, I like Mixon. Houston's been pretty good run defense this year, so maybe not necessarily Achane. And I don't really see too much else that I would go to apart from, maybe Schultz as a tight end. There seems to be some tight ends in good situations this week. Cheap tight ends. He's at 3,300. So let's get him in there. Those are our pivots off of guys like Brenton Strange and Stone Smart. So we've seen a few already that are in just as good spots, but don't have that recency bias tied to them. All right, let's go into the Jets first. The Jaguars. This one we're looking at a total of 40.5 points. Let me just go through my injuries and make sure I'm not missing anything here. We got Njoku. Looks like he's going to be out. Bucky Irving. Let me double check these two. Cleveland. I'm going to go share this over at Cleveland. Njoku is questionable, so he's not officially out. So Njoku is questionable. He hasn't had any practices, though, so there's a good chance he'll be out. Cedric Tillman is definitely out. A couple weeks ago in Showdown, we were using Jamari Thrash. I think Michael Woods, though, was relevant last week. Go back to my Cleveland game. Let's see. Michael Woods. Last week versus Pittsburgh. Had 3 targets versus Pittsburgh. So, Michael Woods might be interesting this week as a cheap guy on Cleveland, depending on how much work we think he's going to get. He's at 3,200. Jeremy Thrash, like I said, was the guy that we were using on Showdown a couple weeks ago. But let's just throw Michael Woods in there, like just in case we need a salary relief option when we're building our Cleveland stacks. All right, got sidetracked there. New Jersey, Jets versus Jacksonville here. So Jags are giving up 23 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. They're giving up 27.6 to the running backs. Looks like Breece Hall is questionable this week. Let's take a look at the Jets real quick. Breece Hall, I believe he missed last week. Braylon Allen would be his backup. and the Jaguars are giving up 27.6 DraftKings points a game. That's one I'm going to want to keep an eye out on, because we want to make sure that, like if Breece Hall is out, then Braylon Allen is going to be interesting. Take a look at the defense. DJ Reed is out in this one, and his backup is Eccles, and Eccles is out. Reed is doubtful. Eccles is out. We got a little bit of thinness on this this secondary already, and the linebackers. Let's see. So we got some. That's the right cornerback, which means the left wide receiver should be in a decent matchup, and that left wide receiver for the Jaguars is Brian Thomas. He's running 35% of his routes there. The Jets don't shadow, and Reed is on the right side 79% of the time, which means I don't think we're going to have to worry about Sauce Gardner migrating over to that side. So maybe we see, Brian Thomas against a backup throughout most of the day, which explains why he's going to be highly owned. So let's get Thomas in our player pool. And let's see, what was the other matchups? The Jets, Rodgers and the receivers all have good matchups. So let's get that threesome there. Oops. Let's get Rodgers in there too. So we're starting to see some interesting plays in this one. Breece Hall, I think we can leave in our player pool. If he's out, just swap him out for Braylon Allen. All right, Baltimore versus the Giants. This is one where we're looking at a 43.5 point spread. 43.5 point total with a 14.5 point spread. So Baltimore, huge favorites in this one. And, is that good for Henry? In a game where, maybe they're not going to want to run him too much, like as they're heading into the home stretch here. Henry's going to get some love this week, but it might be Justice Hill who is able to get some work done in that second half if the Ravens have enough of a lead. Malik Neighbors has that good matchup against Baltimore's defense. They're giving up 30 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. As far as Neighbors' ownership goes, that is something I'm going to be interested in because he's got DeVito throwing to him. And if DeVito's throwing to him and he's going to be highly owned, looking at about under 10% owned for Neighbors this week. So I think Neighbors is a safe guy to leave in our lineups, and we just hope that DeVito is able to to get him something. I'm not playing DeVito with him. I don't think that he's a good quarterback, but maybe he can get the ball to Neighbors. Against that Giants defense, they've been good against wideouts, so I'm not necessarily interested in Flowers, but I do think that we can get Henry in here. I think Justice Hill might be more of a pick for us. Like we can look at the yardage over on Underdog for him. And if we go to tight end, the Giants tight end has a pretty good matchup, and that's going to be Bellinger. He's at 28K. I don't necessarily want him in my lineup. I think I got enough cheap options at the tight end position this week. So let me just make sure I'm not missing anyone here. Tracy's got a difficult matchup against that Baltimore defense. Justice Hill could be interesting if you think it's going to be a blowout. Slayton will be interesting as well as a wideout versus Baltimore. So that should give us some options there if we want to play anyone from that game. Cincinnati, Tennessee. Jamar Chase is chasing the Triple Crown. Cincinnati, they're almost eliminated from the playoffs. They have very slim chances of getting in. This could be a game where they decide just to put up stats. And those types of games, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, like Chase Brown's going to be in play in this one. Tennessee's defense, since they lost Ladarius Sneed, has not been very good. They started off the season as one of the toughest pass defenses, but they lost some key pieces, and now they've become like a middling matchup. But I think Joe Burrow should be able to pick them apart. They're playing in Tennessee. One thing with Tennessee, like it went from 30 degrees to about it's going to be in mid-50s tomorrow. So don't be surprised if we see some wind. Keep an eye on the wind. When you have those temperature fluctuations like that, it can lead to some pretty heavy winds. It was pretty windy out today. I live in Nashville, so it was definitely seeing some wind today, but we'll have to see if that's still like that tomorrow. Tennessee, one thing that's interesting in this Tennessee game, so I like all the passing game of Cincy in this one. So let's get Burrow in there. Not necessarily going towards the Levis route, but I definitely think that we can put a couple of his receivers in there for run backs. Ridley and Westbrook. Those guys will both be interesting. The tight end, Chigokonkwo, has a good matchup, and he's gotten 4+ targets in the last 2 games. The Titans are giving up 60, or the Bengals are giving up 16.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So that is going to put Chig in play this week, especially with his uptick in targets recently, and that's going to make a good piece for us in our underdog pick'ems too. I'll get to that in a minute. And I got Chase in there already. Chase has just been a beast. Jamar Chase and Chase Brown. Got them both in there. Let's go New England, Arizona. Get a lot of games on this slate. All right, so this matchup, New England, Arizona, we're looking at Ramondre Stevenson has a decent game. It's a 46.5 point total. Arizona's 5.5 point favorites. They've been susceptible to the running back position recently. So let's get Ramondre in there. New England has been giving up 23 DraftKings points a game to the running back. So it's not that great of a matchup for James Conner. And if you look at Conner, he's had 1 week over 20 DraftKings points since way back early in the season against Washington. So I don't know what all the excitement is over Conner this week. Like, this is a week where I could see, even Drake May having some success against Arizona's defense. The slot position would be the most vulnerable. So that would be Demario Douglas. So, I could see Douglas in there. Arizona, New England's giving up 22.6 to wideouts. So we can put Harrison in our lineups and, maybe Wilson. Wilson's been doing decent recently. Let's get Murray over there. far as the tight ends, I don't really see a good matchup on either of those guys. But if I got Murray in there, I'm going to go ahead and put McBride in there too. And I think that's about it for this game. Yeah, Hunter Henry, not really liking that matchup. Let's go to Indy versus Denver. Let me check something. What was that game where I saw the running back that Connor? I want to see if there's any damage to New England's defense that might be putting people on putting some of that ownership on Connor. All right, let's look at this Cleveland defense or New England defense. Bunch of guys on IR with their linebackers and nose tackle. So they are pretty banged up. Christian Gonzalez in the secondary is banged up, and Duggar, they're both questionable. So New England could be pretty susceptible in this one. So that does make them interesting. Indy, Denver. Let's go over to the quarterback position. Neither of these teams are giving up a lot of points to the quarterback position. Indy's giving a little bit more. They're giving up 17.3. That's going to make Nick's interesting. He's at 6,300 though, so it's a middling matchup. So not my favorite spot, especially playing against Indy. Indy is in the hunt for a playoff spot. I think they're on the bubble for a wild card spot. So they're not out of it yet. So let's take a look. And Richardson is popular this week. For the bye, I believe they had a bye last week. And before that, he had that 23-point game against New England. So, and then a 29-point game against the Jets. So I can see why Richardson is popular, but he's going against Denver's defense, so I'm not buying that. Denver's defense is giving up 15.4 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Who's interesting in this one is going to be these running backs for the Denver side. Denver is looking at Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. And McLaughlin was the one getting the work last time. Let's take a look at their snap shares last week. Now, they're coming out of a bye, so they could make a commitment to one of these dudes, McLaughlin, if they're just tired of Williams at this point. Williams had 30% before the bye, and McLaughlin had 24%. So it's kind of a split between those guys. But McLaughlin could have taken a little bit of a edge there with his performance because he was doing pretty good. He ended up getting 14 attempts, 84 rushing yards. So he had 14 attempts in his last game, 15 touches, 84 yards. Don't be surprised if McLaughlin gets the work in this good matchup. So let's put him in the player pool. As far as wideouts, not too much interesting for the wideouts. The Colts are only giving up 17.7 DraftKings points a game. Let's see if they got any injuries. Juju Brents. Yeah, I think we should be. I'm not really buying. I don't know what the ownership on Sutton is coming from. Let me see how much ownership he has. Just a yeah, he's at 15% ownership. I'm not buying Sutton. And then Josh Downs. Not looking at the best matchup there. He's got a middling matchup against Denver. Denver's best matchup is with the tight end position. The Colts are giving up 15.4 DraftKings points a game to the tight end, but that's kind of a mess on Denver. Troutman might be interesting at 2,500. We can look over and see who's getting the snap shares at the tight end position because that's been kind of in the air for Denver throughout the season. All right, I'm seeing Troutman had 37% before the bye. Krull had 22 and Adkins had 26. So kind of a messy situation there. Not really going to touch that. So I think we can skip over the rest of this game. Buffalo, Detroit. This game should be a popular one. Josh Allen in any of these tough match or these potential shootouts is going to be in play. I mean, we can just go down the list here. St. Brown, I believe that Buffalo has been susceptible to the slot. Where's Buffalo? Buffalo has given up 14.4 to the slot. And on the other side, Detroit's also been susceptible, giving up 16.9 to the slot. So both these are good matchups for slot receivers. Let's go with Amon-Ra. Let's get him in there. And then Shakir. And then let's put in Gibbs. Buffalo's been giving up 26 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So Gibbs and Montgomery are in play. Cook. Detroit's run defense has been pretty good. Only giving up 16.4 DraftKings points. So maybe not so much on Cook this week. Cooper could potentially be in play. And as far as the tight end position, neither of these teams are giving up much to the tight end position. So I think that's about who I would look at. Both these teams are kind of very similar in their defense's strengths, except Detroit is better against the run. So this could be a game that's everybody's expecting to shoot out, but it ends up being a little bit lower scoring. Looking at a 54.5 point total. I could see this game going under based on how these defenses have been doing. It's a 1.5 point spread though. So it could definitely go over, but I would take the under on it. And I think we got enough guys in that one. Curtis Samuel might be interesting if you wanted to add in like a cheap guy that is going to be in a decent matchup. Let's look at his snap count. Samuel had a 36% snap share, so he's getting a decent amount of snaps. He's only 10% less than these other guys. Shakir only had 47%, and Hollins had 46. Mari Cooper, we got to go to multi down here. If you're stacking this game, you can add those other guys in your player pool. But if you only want a few guys, I think you focus on the slot receivers and those Detroit tight ends. Mari Cooper, or Detroit running backs, not tight ends. Mari Cooper had a 32% snap share last week. So all these guys are just low volume guys on the Buffalo side. But if we're seeing like Curtis Samuel at 3.6K in a decent matchup, let's throw him in there. That if we only wanted to play like one piece, like we could do like Curtis Samuel and run it back with one of those running backs. Like while everybody else is game stacking that one, and then maybe we stack, Cleveland or something like that. That'd be a way to do. Tampa Bay at the Chargers. Chargers defense has been pretty good all year. They've had some tougher matchups recently, though, so Tampa Bay, could definitely exploit that. 17.7 DraftKings points a game to the slot they're giving up, and that's been Sterling Shepard. So Shepard might be a sneaky guy for us this week. Let's get Shepard in the player pool. On the Chargers side, the tight end has been getting 15.1 from the Tampa Bay defense. That's why we see that chalkiness on Stone Smart. He's got a good projection for only 2.6K. But I mean, we've looked at a bunch of cheaper options that could be good. Herbert is in a good matchup, and this is a game where he's facing off against a team that could push it. So Herbert makes sense this week. I wonder what his ownership is. About 12, 13%. So he's pretty high owned. McConkey is questionable. 3 limited practices this week, though. So maybe, maybe he plays this week. He might not necessarily be out. So keep an eye on his status. If you want to use Herbert, McConkey makes a lot of sense. Actually, no, I take that back. Tampa Bay has only been giving up 8 DraftKings points a game to the slot receivers. So let's get McConkey out, like with him being hurt and stuff. And that would be more interesting for Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer as our plays. We saw, Quentin Johnson. I can't get Quentin Johnson right on these damn showdown slates. I faded him this past week, and he ended up getting a touchdown. Or not a touchdown, but yeah, he did get a touchdown. And he had a decent game overall. Meanwhile, Joshua Palmer last week had 13.8 DraftKings points. Not horrible for a showdown slate. All right, so let's get let's get back over here. I think if you're going to do a stack of this game, you can include Mike Evans in there too. 19.5 DraftKings points. Here, let's go back over here and let's look at the. I want to see if there's any injuries. There's got to be a reason why Rachaad White is so apart from Bucky Irving. So let's see if the Chargers have anything interesting on any interesting injuries on their defense here, real quick. All right, so we're looking at Perryman is questionable. Asante Samuel's still out. A bunch of these guys are out on the linebackers. Disley is out. Obviously, if Vlad McConkey's out, then they're missing Rager and Fehoko too. So that's going to put Darius Davis in play, which would be interesting. That's a speedster. When he's had opportunities, he's been pretty good. Darius Davis will be interesting if Vlad McConkey is out because they're really thin on receiver right now. All right, let's go back over here. Let's get Evans into the player pool if we're going to be doing any Justin Herbert stacks. All right, Pittsburgh, Philly, the last game. Looking at a 42.5 point total in this one, 5.5 point spread in favor of Philly. Both these teams' defenses have been good this year. But Barkley has been a stud. He'll be kind of an lower owned than maybe he should be. But he's expensive at $8,600. A.J. Brown is a squeaky wheel, but he's $8K. The weak spots against either of these teams, I think Dallas Goedert's the only one in this game that basically has a decent matchup. So this is going to be a tough one with these defenses. And Dallas Goedert, we got to even see if he's. I think he's hurt. So let's see. And I don't like using Calcaterra. God, Goddard's always on the IR. That dude's on the IR again. I don't like anyone in this game. So let's go ahead and build our player pools here, our lineups here. Before we do that, how did I end up with this many guys? Let me go through this real quick. It's like they threw a bunch of guys that I didn't plug into my player pool here. All right, let's get Pollard out. I don't like Connor. I don't like Sutton. I don't think I had Goff in there. Oh, that's my excluded pool. I was going to say. All right, let me go back in there. Henry, Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, Gibbs. All right, let's get rid of Connor. Let's get rid of Goff. Let's get rid of Sutton. All right, so let's get into this. But first, let's go over to Underdog. Let's build some. Let's build a pick'em off of some of those picks that I liked. All right, so we're going to go into the NFL. So now, Underdog is going to be a good way if you want to put like a $10 insurance on your DFS investment, and maybe you have some plays that you like that you feel like are good plays, but they're not going to get you the points that you need in a DraftKings lineup to make you start them in your lineups, but you believe that they can perform better than what they're being projected for. That is where Underdog is going to come in really handy as an insurance. Use the promo code SEEK On your first deposit with Underdog, they're going to match you up to $1,000. They're going to match you 50% up to $1,000. And we got playoff best ball already started. So I'm going to start doing some of those shows. That is one of the best games that you can play. You've already gotten a look at the players and how they are doing in the schemes with different coaches, with the rookies and everything like that. So you already have gotten a good look at these players, and now you get to do a end of season draft of guys that you think are going to do well in the playoffs or advance throughout the playoffs. You can build pods of teams that you think are going to make it to the Super Bowl, and you just give a good variety of pods and teams that could potentially make the Super Bowl. A lot of strategy goes into it. I cover that on my shows, but get that deposit in now for Underdog. You're going to want to get invested in playoff best ball this year. We can pick some sneaky teams that are, being picked late in the drafts, like Tampa Bay, Minnesota, teams like that have potential to have huge offensive outputs that you can draft relatively late in these drafts. And they have a potential to win like 1 or 2 games in the playoffs as well. So it'll set you up nicely. But for now, let's focus on Pick'em. And the game that I want to focus on first is the Bengals game. So let's look at this game. Now, the Titans have allowed multiple passing touchdowns in 6 of the last 9 games. I believe Rich Rebar put out that stat. Going to go higher than 1.5 on Burrow. And the guy that I like is Higgins. I think Higgins has the better matchup. He's projected for 66.5 receiving yards. Now, if we want to go a little bit higher than that, we can boost our projection there and get a little bit more of a return on it. So I'm going to put Higgins in there too. And Chigakonkwu, talked about him already. Cincinnati is giving up the second most tight end touchdowns to the tight end position. And Okonkwo has been getting 4 and 6 targets in the last 2 games. Maybe that leads to something in this game. But the important part of Chig is him getting a touchdown is going to put us at 2.85 higher. So that is going to boost our overall return if it hits. So let's put Chig in there. It's going to knock us, by the time this thing's done, into 60, 70x range. So let's get Chig in there. So we got Chig, we got Higgins, and we got Okonkwo. Another game that I like to correlate this week is the Giants. So let's get back into the NFL. Let's go to the Giants. Giants-Ravens game. So now I think this game is going to blow out in favor of the Ravens. So there's a couple things in play there. I would go lower on Tyrone Tracy's rushing yards. That's going to bump us up to 4 plays, and we're at 21.95%. If that happens, Justice Hill is going to get more usage. And look at his higher lower on his rushing yards. I'm going to bump that up. I'm going to bump that up to 29%, 29.5 rushing yards. Look what that does for my return on that. So if you play this lineup, if you put $10 on that, you can make $930 if you're playing that. And it's just basically an insurance. If you're uncomfortable with the prospects of getting all 5 guys right in the situation, you could put a flex on it, and that would that would reduce your return by half, but you would also set yourself up so that you can make some money if you only got 4 correct instead of 5. So if you do standard, if you only get 4 right, then you lose. But if you do the flex and you get 4 right, then you still win $145. That's still 14.5 times your money. You wanted to do like $20, like if you win, you get 18, $1,860, which is pretty good return there. And if you only got 4 right, you get 290. If you did the flex, and if you did the flex, you'd only get 930 if you won. So it's basically half if you do the flex. Now, if we wanted to add on to this and do a 6-man instead of a 5-man, let's go with that Stone Smart play. Let's say you like Stone Smart, but you don't want to go chalky with him in DFS. You don't have to. If you go over here, let's say 30 receiving yards. Let's bump him up to 39. Go higher on that. You're adding a 6th person in, but you're putting your chances of winning up to 145 times your money. I think because I already have a couple multipliers in, I can't do standard. But you can get 145 times your money. If you get 4 correct, you get 18 times your money. And then if you get 5 correct, that's 18 times your money. 4 correct is only 1.8 times your money, but you get the idea. You can increase your multiples there by adding different players that you think have good matchups this week. And I didn't share that whole thing there. So Joe Burrow, I had higher on 1.5 touchdowns. T. Higgins, I had higher on T. Higgins, I had higher than 69.5 receiving yards. I had Chigakonkwu higher than 0.5 rushing receiving touchdowns. Tyrone Tracy higher than or lower than I guess 50.5 rushing yards. Justice Hill higher than 29.5 rushing yards. And then if you wanted to throw that 6 pick in, Stone Smart higher than 1 point or higher than 39.5 receiving yards. But let's get rid of Stone Smart. Show you what this one looked like. If you put $10 in this, it's $930 if you end up winning. That's with that 5-man. I'm going to be putting up a shorter video later on with that one in it too. If you do the flex, you get basically half of the return, but you can also win some money if you only get 4 correct. So Underdog, use the promo code SEEK. It's good insurance for when you're doing these DraftKings lineups and you'll want to have to worry about beating out against 50,000 people or however many your player pool is. At least with this, you don't have to beat anybody. You just have to be right with your projections. All right, so let's go back over to our lineup. Now, let's see what we get if we do a optimize with our player pool currently. Still getting Kyler Murray. All right, so let's get into this here. This is where I like to play around with my projections a little bit. I don't mind that 23 projection. Burrow at 20. I might bump Burrow up a little bit higher. I think they're going to be just trying to jack up their stacks. Their stats. Kyler Murray against New England's defense. It's not that great of a matchup. I don't see what the love is here for Kyler Murray. Let me see what the Patriots is looking like on their injuries. Like I said, Duggar and Gonzalez are are both questionable, and Barrymore is questionable as well. So they got a defensive end that's questionable, but I don't know. I think for this one, I'm going to bump Murray down. I don't want any exposure to Murray. I'm going to bump him down to 18, which is reasonable considering New England's giving up 17 DraftKings points a game. Mahomes, I think, is in a better spot this week. If we think that Cleveland game shoots out, I'm going to bump him up to 20. I'm going to bump up Winston. I don't know why Winston is 16. All right, let's look at Winston's games. 38.98, 29.6, 27.5. If we really like Winston this week, let's bump him up to 23 along with Burrow. We can play around with Rodgers later on. Let's go into running backs. Don't really have any preferences on running backs this week. So I think I might just go with what they give me there. Actually, I take that back. I think I think Gibbs and Montgomery should have good games, but I don't necessarily like them more than those other guys. Let's go to wide receivers. Chase, I like. Let's go to Jerry Jeudy. Let's bump up Jeudy a little bit. He's projected for 15. Let's bump him up to 17. Elijah Moore. I like Elijah Moore this week. I'm going to bump him up to 16. And they're playing against Worthy. Where's Hopkins at? I think Hopkins is probably the better run back this week. I'm going to bump him up to 17. All right, let's see where that gives us. All right, so this gives us a little bit more lean on the Winston lineup. Winston to Moore and Jeudy. We're running it back with Hopkins. Let's change our tight end projections here. I don't want to end up with a bunch of Stone Smart. I would put Stone Smart probably down around like 5. If we think Chig gets a touchdown, maybe we can bump him up a couple points. Let's bump him up to 8 just to give him a little bit more of a boost. And I probably need to get some more defenses in here too. Oh, yeah, I only have one defense. All right, let's go to excluded defenses. Just do what I normally do. Go to salary. Anyone I see that's interesting. Nope. I don't like the Browns. I don't like the Titans. I don't hate the Patriots. I don't mind the Patriots. Saints versus Washington, no. Indy versus Denver, no. Dolphins, no. Bills versus Detroit, no. Bucks, Chargers, not really going there either. Jags versus the Jets. Don't really like that. Jags are just a disaster right now. Panthers, Dallas. I don't mind the Panthers. Steelers, Philly. A lot of drama going on in Philly right now, but it's a potent offense. Don't mind the Cowboys versus the Panthers either. Baker Mayfield could definitely make a mistake. Let's put the Chargers in there. Lions, Buffalo. I don't mind putting the Cardinals D in there. Jets D could be interesting. Eagles D. I think you got enough there. Ravens. We can put the Ravens in there. Let's see what that gets us. Double tight end. Winston, Moore. Got rid of our double stack. If I'm playing Winston, I want to put two. I want to put two receivers with him. So let's do this. Oops. Akins. We're going to put Judy. We're going to put Woods, I think was the other guy. And we're going to put Moore in there. So I'm going to want at least two of these guys in every Jameis lineup. All right, so let's build another one here. Let's call that Cincinnati receivers. And want Chase and or Higgins. And everyone with Burrow. Now for runbacks, I'm going to want Kelsey, Gray, Worthy, or Hopkins. Jesse Gray, Worthy, Hopkins. Did I put Pacheco in there? Let's get Pacheco in there. Let's put Pacheco in our player pool here. All right. So I want 1 to 2 of these Chiefs too with Winston. All right. So let's on the Cincy side, I think that they're going to be padding their stats, so I'm not really worried about a run back on the Cincy side. All right. So let's build 150 of these, see what comes out. So remember, with that Underdog, use the promo code SEEK, SEEK. They're going to match you 50% up to $1,000. It's going to get you set up. You can do these little side pick'ems in addition to your lineups to give you like low, and you don't even have to pay a lot. Just pay like $10 on those things, and maybe you win like 1,000. So you pay for your next few slates or something like that. All right. So some of these lineups here, we got Winston, we got Dowdle, we got Chase Brown. So we got Winston to Moore and Judy, running it back with Hopkins. We got Ferguson. Ferguson has not had a touchdown all season, but then he's playing Carolina, which has given up, I believe, the most DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. We got Chuba Hubbard on the other side of that game. Don't necessarily like going to running backs, but I won't fight it unless it's getting too much in there. All right, let's go into these running backs. Let's check out these projections here. Dowdle's getting 17 points against Carolina. I mean, it's such a good matchup for both of those running backs. It's kind of hard to get away from that. 25 points is what Dallas has given up, and 28 is what Carolina has given up. So, yeah, it's tough to get away from that. But let's Chuba Hubbard. I love that he's at 20 projection. I got him on a bunch of my best ball teams this week. Let's bump Dowdle down to 16 just because I don't want too much exposure to him. I don't want to get too much exposure to both those guys in my lineups. Especially if I think that Carolina is going to win this game. All right, let's try it. Let's see if that reduces it a little bit. And sometimes you just don't want to fight the optimizer necessarily. There's been a few times, especially on showdown slates, where like it kept trying to force a guy in, and I didn't like it because I had my mind made up on who I wanted as my core, and it ended up biting me in the ass when the guy goes off. So it can always happen that way. Winston, Brown, Hubbard. This one gives me Henry and Okonkwo. I got Okonkwo as a run back to the Brown. I got Winston, Elijah Moore, and Jerry Jeudy running it back with Hopkins. Like this is a pretty good lineup. Got Winston to Moore and Jeudy running it back with Hopkins. Again, we got the Brown to Okonkwo. We got Chuba Hubbard. This one basically just swapped out the defense. Looks like it's doing that for the first few lineups here. Here we go. We got Winston, Mixon, Chase Brown, Elijah Moore, DeAndre Hopkins, Jerry Jeudy, Okonkwo. Getting a lot of Okonkwo. Here's one with Ferguson. So you get an idea. Like these are some ideas for Winston lineups. I kind of like all these lineups make sense to me. You can mess around with your correlation a little bit. We got Hubbard to Ferguson in this one. Higgins don't need a run back on Tennessee like I talked about earlier. And then we got Brown in that one too. So don't mind that one. This one has Hubbard and Thielen in it, which I don't mind. Hopkins. Looks like Hopkins will probably be the main guy getting run back. Let's see. Hopkins. I don't need to bump him up that much if I got him. They're projecting him at 10. I'm going to put him at 13. See if it gives us a little bit more variety with our Kansas City guys. And this is like the kind of like finessing that you can do with an optimizer. I'm definitely not the best optimizer guy, but you know, I've had a few situations where I was able to put out a variety of lineups that definitely made me competitive. I think that first week I did all my slant ones and I came in like 6th place in the slant. So, you know, like optimizers definitely help as long as you got like a good grip on, you know, the player pool and the matchups and everything like that to kind of finagle with your projections. So you're getting a little bit different than other people. But for the most part, you want to keep, if you have a good projection set or a good spot where you trust the projections, for the most part, you want to rely on those projections, but you're going to want to put your bias in some of this stuff. Like I like Cleveland and Kansas City. So I bumped those guys up a little bit and you know, put it in the groupings to make sure that I'm getting some of these stacks. So we got Winston, Moore, Jeudy. We got Brown and Higgins and Okonkwo in that game. And then we got Pacheco in this one. Pacheco again. We got Hopkins, Pacheco, Hopkins. Yeah, so Pacheco and Hopkins are going to be the main guys. Looks like that the optimizer is spitting out. We got one gray there. Winston to Moore and Jeudy running it back with Gray in this one. And then we got Brown, double tight end in this one. I don't know if I necessarily want double tight end this week, but you know, you can play around with that too. Like once you built these lineups, let's say I didn't want double tight end in this one. I don't want McBride. I could go to Pacheco there, Stevenson, a bunch of guys, Kelsey, turn it into, an onslaught type of situation. But you guys get the idea with that. Let's do one more. Let's bump Burrow up. Let's put Winston back down to 16.7. And let's keep Burrow up there. And let's build 150 and see what kind of Burrow lineups it gives us. All right, so it's pumping these out. Hit the subscribe button. I'm looking for 150 subscribers. Not 150. I'm looking for 1,500 subscribers. I'm at about 1,320 right now. I want to try to get to 1,400 by the end of this week, so appreciate that. I only need 80 more to get there. Herbert is pumping us. Herbert, I skip over that one. I didn't put my Herbert stacks set up. We've got Burrow to Brown and Higgins. Don't mind that. We got Moore and Judy in this one too. I got to change those projections on Moore and Judy. Yeah, make sure to change your projections back if you're onto a different stack. I'm gonna keep Moore at around at least 13. Just because there's so many injuries to Cleveland right now. Remember, we're still waiting on Njoku news. He's listed as questionable, but like from everything that I've heard, it sounds like he is leaning more towards the doubtful side of that. So just keep that in mind with him. All right. So now we got Burrow to Brown and Higgins. We got Chuba Hubbard running it back with Ferguson in the flex. Like I said, I don't like going in Conquo and Ferguson, so skip over that one. The McBride, it keeps putting McBride in there, so that's interesting. This one I guess I don't mind it so much. It's I'd rather have a run back for Hubbard and Thielen. I want a Dallas guy, and if I'm doing that, so let's see, McBride. Doesn't quite get us to Dowdle. We're $100 short of Dowdle. Let's get Dowdle in there. And let's change the Chargers out and put in like the well, if we put in the Panthers, we're running our Panthers D with, I mean, it's probably not the best move, but you get the idea. You want to swap out your defense. This one, they got Chig and Thielen and Hubbard. to go against Ferguson. So, you get the idea here, showing you needs some more finessing on the Burrow lineup, but we're at an hour and a half here. So if you guys like that direction, just play around with your optimizers. Don't be afraid to change your projections drastically one way or the other. If you think a guy is going to do real well, like don't be like afraid to project him for like 25 points if you think he's going to go off this week, just to make sure that you're getting a decent amount of exposure to him. Same with guys that you think are going to underperform. It's just a matter of finessing the optimizer, and you can have some good results with it. All right, guys, that's it for Player Pool. Hit the like button. Give me the 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on, and hit the subscribe. I'm looking to get to 1,500, and I will see you guys. Oh, check out the Underdog short that I put out, and I will talk to you guys later.